So some pretty interesting rule changes by the NFL recently. The main one being the banning of the hip drop tackle. And I think just right off the bat, this sounds a little bit worse than it is. It kind of gives the impression that there's all these limitations on tackles now. Going through the definition, this is basically when a player, most likely a defender, grabs the runner with the ball and pulls him down by basically dropping his body weight and then usually landing on or trapping the runner's leg at or below the knee line. So I think in a general sense, it's pretty much when someone's trailing the runner with the ball and they'll just kind of go up and wrap around their legs, just kind of basically drop and pull them with them. So they're basically using their body weight just to pull the runner down out of desperation. And this is what usually ends up leading to some sort of injury, whether it's a rolled ankle, twisting your leg, maybe anything with your Achilles or ACL. So that's kind of going into place to really protect from this dangerous tackle. And it's going to be counted as unnecessary roughness, so a 15-yard penalty and automatic first down. It was voted in by the NFL owners at their annual meeting. And just looking at this, I think from a general standpoint, how this is going to affect the game, the obvious answer is that it's hopefully going to eliminate season-ending injuries for players, so it will protect mostly offensive guys, but probably going to make it a lot harder for defenses, defenders, defensive backs who are just trying to make a split-second decision on getting that tackle. Just looking at some numbers, last season there was 230 of these hip drop tackles. This comes from the NFL themselves. And then comparing this for the number of games for the total season, there's 272 games for the season. So that would mean there's probably about a little less than one of these per game. So I don't think it will have as big of an impact on the game by numbers, but I think there's a little bit more to that than may catch the eye. And then with that 230 number, 15 of those ended up with significant injuries last season. So that's why they went ahead and proposed this. So that would be about just 6% of the injuries coming from that specific play. Whereas the NFL said that they estimated that the hip drop tackle led to an increased injury rate of 25%. So I see what they're doing with the increased injury rate, but looking at that 6%, I don't think it's as big of a cause of concern as they make it out to be. More of where this is going to come into play is on the mental side, and that's something that's not going to be measured by statistics. So again, going by these numbers, there's not a whole lot of these hip drop tackles that actually happen. So if this gets enforced next season, for example, you could look at the numbers and be like, oh, well, only X amount of hip drop tackles ended up happening. So it really didn't affect the outcome of the game, or it didn't affect defensive that much. I would say from a mental standpoint, what's really going to be tough to measure is any sort of hesitation that defenders are now going to have. If they're trying to make a tackle, maybe they're going to think twice about how they're going to go about it, and that might lead to bigger gains, more touchdowns, stuff like that. So I think, again, from that mental standpoint, any sort of hesitation that will come of this will have a drastic impact on the game. Whereas before those 230 hip drop tackles, I wouldn't say probably the majority of them were deliberate. I think they just kind of end up happening. So again, something like that I think is one of the more unmeasurable outcomes of this. So it is going to be a little bit hard for defenders, but I think most of these guys are pros. They will be able to adapt. Probably won't make a huge difference on the game, though it will have a definite impact. And on the opposing side, how this is going to affect teams offensively, I think where this really will benefit teams is not just specifically making big gains on offense, but specifically having the ball after the catch. So any sort of teams that might have really good statistics in terms of their yards after a catch, whether it's their running back, their tight end, their receivers, or running backs in general. I think this will also benefit a lot of big runs, probably going to end up in a little bit more of high scoring games, again with that mental. Going to be interested to see how this plays out. Feel free to let me know your guys' opinions on these rule changes, on the hip drop tackle ban specifically. Appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you later.